Our next speaker will try to make us understand what ASEAN integration is and how it is going to affect our country. Our next speaker is from the Department of Trade, a trade and industry specialist, and from the Bureau of Trade Relations of DTI. He leads the Philippine representation at the working group and technical level on trade in services negotiations for ASEAN and dialogue partner agreements. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Raymond A. Astillas Sr.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Naway magandang ating gising today. And I hope in behalf of the Department of Trade and Industry we'll be able to at least share some pointers, some information about the whole ASEAN integration process. Again, I'd like to also thank the organizers, the United Architects of the Philippines, PRC, all of the panelists, and our stakeholders for making sure that ASEAN is always a relevant topic in all your undertakings. So, hindi ko po alam kung naka-attend na po kayo ng sessions ng DTI before on ASEAN. May have like show of hands lang po, so at least I have an idea. Any of you have attended some of our advocacy sessions previously? Can I see some hands raised? Isa lang nakikita ko rito. Okay. So we're all, most of you are all on the same page. Simple lang po yung message ko. I guess, let me just explain. I'm Ron from the Bureau of International Trade Relations, and our office is in charge of all the international trade engagements of the country, be it bilateral, regional, or multilateral. Bilateral, I think Commissioner Gigi has mentioned about the Philippines EFTA negotiations. Regional, we have APEC and ASEAN. Multilateral, we have the World Trade Organization. So my message to all of you today is very simple. UAP. U. There's a need to understand what's going on. There's a need to understand the process involved in regional integration, the reality outside. A. There is a need to accept this reality because sooner or later it will affect you. And lastly, P. You need to push yourself. Push forward, push yourself, and make sure that you engage the economic region in a more beneficial manner. So basically, that's my message. So let me give you an overview of what the ASEAN Economic Community is. This is my outline. So I begin with what ASEAN is, then the community process, which is currently ongoing, and then I zero in on the economic perspective of the whole regional integration. Where are we now, 2015 AEC? And then let me highlight to you some of the initiatives and the prospects beyond this year. ASEAN. What is ASEAN? Siguro naman po lahat tayo, at least at one point in our life, we've heard, we've read something about ASEAN, we've seen something about ASEAN. And this particular map indicates the 10 ASEAN member states, or AMS as we call them. And if you look at this table, kita po ba yung table? Medyo baka masyadong maliit. Very, very simple. From Brunei all the way to Vietnam, the region is quite diverse in terms of government structure, in terms of religion, population, economic development, etc. You have those who are leading in terms of development, such as Singapore, Malaysia, but you also have our brothers and sisters who are still living in least developed economies, such as Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. Vietnam, it's moving up. So again, despite the diversity of ASEAN, some people will say that in this diversity, unity is prevalent, unity is felt. And I think that is the value of having this regional bloc in ASEAN, because if you just do it alone, almost always it's difficult to push things. But if you do it with the rest of your neighbors, there's always strength in numbers. Do you agree? Do you agree? That's why we have UAP. And we don't just have an individual architect for that matter. As a whole, the population of ASEAN is around 600 million people. 625, it's increasing. The GDP per capita is around 3,761 US dollars. Why is this important? Bakit po importante na malaman natin na meron pong 600 million population sa ASEAN? At bakit din po importante na meron silang GDP per capita na around $3,000 per person? Why is this important? When I talk to like business sector, we tell them, you have 625 million clients. You have 625 million as your consumer base. You have 625 million as potential beneficiary of your services. How much do you have at this stage? How much of the pie do you take advantage of at this time? I think that's the reason why we keep on emphasizing that in ASEAN alone, pag pinagsama niyo po si Indonesia at si Philippines, 200 plus million people from Indonesia, 100 plus from the Philippines, we already comprise half of ASEAN. And I think the consciousness of people have to be elevated, rather towards this particular number. Because if not, then I assume you're already satisfied with whatever pie share you have at this stage. The community process is really focused on not just the economic aspect, but there are other things that we are looking at. There's a social, security political, there's a social cultural. And these three communities or sub-communities actually comprise the ASEAN community. Kadalasan po, matatanong kami, what is happening sa ibang pillar? Let me just highlight that for political security, it's being led by DFA, the Foreign Affairs. For the social cultural, it's DSWD for the Philippine panel. And then it's DTI, us, doing the economic engagement, rather. And we'd like to continuously tell people that it's not just about economics, that it's also about a holistic development in the region involving security, political concerns, and more so, social-cultural aspect of development. If you do not have exchanges, say for example, among universities, students, cultural understanding, I don't think the economic process will prosper fully. So these three are all complementing. If you look at this particular chart, there is a house, which is the ASEAN Community House, where you see the three pillars comprised of the three sub-communities I mentioned. And in the end, what they'd like to develop or to address is really the development gap that is prevalent in the region. Any one of you have seen any of these documents? Meron na po ba nakakita nito sa website, sa hard copy, or kung ano man na dinidistribute po namin all over the region? Wala po? I always say this every time I show this slide. Meron po ako isang paboritong weather forecaster back then. Ang lagi niya sinasabi, knowledge is, sino po yon? Sino po? Ayan, magkakakilala na yung mga age natin. No? Yung ating, kung sino pa yung na-expose kay Ernie Barong, but now wala na. Yung ating the new generation, they're not familiar anymore with this newscast. He's my favorite because again, he has a very simple principle that indeed knowledge is power, and these documents are publicly available online. These documents are what we call the blueprints of community building. The blue one for the social, security political, the yellow one for the economic, and the orange one for the social-cultural. Blueprint. Architects po kayo, may blueprint kayong ginagawa. Tama po ba? Kahapon lang, I was talking to Secretary Domingo. Last night, we were briefing him for the ASEAN Summit next week. And then we were discussing about the EEC blueprint. Tinanong niya kami mga bata, sabi ni relative to Secretary Domingo, Secretary Greg was saying, alam niyo ba kung bakit blueprint ang tawag? Baka dapat hindi na blueprint, hindi na ASEAN blueprint. Sabi, sir, bakit po? Blueprint kasi po, engineers, architects, they produce blueprint, di ba? Yeah. Ngayon hindi na blueprint, CAD na, di ba? Digital na, pwede mag-digital. But I think sinasabi niya, it's because it's printed sa blueprinter. Am I correct? I'm not too familiar. But sabi ko na kay Secretary, but sir, I'm familiar with yung photocopying machines na powder po ginagamit. But in any case, sinasabi niya, dapat mag-modernize na. I still see engineers, architects, signing the blueprint. There are bigger printing machines, he was saying. So I think in ASEAN, we're also moving towards a post-2015 vision, which may be renamed not just as a blueprint, but perhaps a roadmap or a game plan or whatever will be the decision of the regions. Again, everything that is happening for the past years are already indicated in these documents. So if I, for example, if I'm from the private sector, I should have done my reading yesterday. But it's okay. Hulimat magaling, naihabol pa rin. Hulimat magaling, pwede nga ihabulin, but there are more challenges involved. So this is the various sectors under the ASEAN community. If you look at the middle section, the economic community has the longest sectoral concerns. And this includes professionals, transportation, communication, finance, tourism, health-related services, etc. Kaya po medyo mabigat din po yung ating pag-push sa economic development dahil nga po it covers a wide range of sectors affecting the country's development. But if you look closely at this particular graph, there's one thing that ASEAN is not yet in terms of development. You know, the ASEAN is not a European Union at this stage. Are we moving towards that particular integration process? Maybe. There will be a policy decision whether we will move towards a European Union model. But if you look at this particular graph, you see at the core of all the integration process a preferential trading agreement, which is quite shallow. It only focuses on certain items, certain aspects of development, national economic development. But one level higher is what we call a free trade area, which the Philippines is currently a signatory to most partners in the region. That is why in terms of free trade areas, or FTAs, we have partnership with CJK, or ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN Korea, the CJK. ANZ, ASEAN Australia, New Zealand, and AI, which is ASEAN India. So this is what we currently have. Move higher, dream bigger. You have a customs union where the external trade policies are common to all. How do you differentiate a customs union with what we have at this stage? Imagine a blank sheet of paper. Puti pong paper, maglagay po kayo ng 10 dots. 10 dots to represent the different ASEAN countries. Sa EU, if there are 28, you put 28 dots and you encircle all these dots in just one big circle. So anywhere you try to penetrate any of the dots, you're just looking at one border. In ASEAN, you have 10 dots, you encircle them individually. So if you want to go to the Philippines, there's a different external policy as opposed to what we have in Malaysia or Singapore. So hopefully, I guess, we'll have to move towards that. And then another level higher is it's a common market where mobility of labor and capital is more felt. At this stage, you might ask, I thought we have mobility of people already in the region. I thought we are already promoting, easy facilitation of entry and exit of our natural persons. In reality, we have not done that. We have visas for tourists, but in terms of like the other permits, the domestic regulations still apply per country. So we have a long way to go, but we're moving towards that, and hopefully at the professionals, for the professional sector, we'll be able to push further this particular mechanism. And then lastly, an economic union, when we also talk about fiscal and monetary policies, which are common across the region. The Department of Finance will say we're still quite behind in terms of a possible fiscal integration because of the reality that some countries are still developing, least developed, and in terms of the assets and the financial capital that's existing in the market, domestic market, it's still not capable of pushing everyone at a certain level or degree of harmonization. There are 4 characteristics. Una po sa lahat, a single market and production base. Kaya po, ngayon ang tariff ay zero na. You can buy anything almost everything is almost present in the market. Competitive economic region, I think this one I'd like to highlight further. In the end, you also have to look at the competitiveness of the region. That's why we're attaching ourselves further or integrating ourselves. How do we become competitive? Transportation, infrastructure, digital divide, skills, professionals. Araw-araw po, sino po dumadaan sa EDSA? Marami. Araw-araw rin po, sino po nakakita na nakapila hanggang EDSA mula taas sa platform ng MRT all the way to EDSA? Na-experience nyo na po ba yun? Rush hour. Subukan nyo po pumunta sa MRT station around 5 o'clock, 5:15. Definitely, if you don't have a value card, stored value card, you would have to line up. Well, most of the time you do line up still. But ang sinasabi po natin in terms of competitiveness, I think Sir Bill is here, there's so many things to be done domestically, and we always want this to be in our radar. And at least at this stage, projects are coming in, and hopefully it will trickle down to the massa, to everyone, so that we feel this development. Equitable economic development. Equitable, no one should be left behind. Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam should not be left behind. People should not be left behind. And lastly, a region that is fully integrated in the global economy. That is why we have free trade agreements with China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India. These are the pillars. I will not dwell on this much, but if you just look at the first column, there's a free flow of services where most of the professionals are under. So again, AEC is really about making trade and investment flow freely. It creates business. It ensures that the business environment is presently acceptable and if not, elevated to a more facilitative atmosphere. And at the same time, it ensures that everybody benefits from the development process. Again, no one should be left behind. And we also have to seize the opportunities in the global market. Quickly, free flow of goods. You have zero tariff. Everything is there already. In the Philippines, since 2010, we have already reduced to zero most of our tariff. Kaya pa madali nang pumasok at maglabas ng produkto sa ASEAN. Kaya lang po may mga bagay pa po na kailangan natin ilagay sa ating exception in terms of putting down the tariff into zero, decreasing the tariff into zero. These includes most of some agricultural products such as rice, chicken, sugar, etc. Bakit po? Because malaki po yung medyo sensitive po tayo sa agricultural because of the agricultural workforce, our farmers, etc. And we want them to be more competitive in the future. Some academicians will say, this is not from DTI, but some academicians will say, maybe it's time to abandon that agricultural policy. Very radical. Maybe it's really time to just continuously import rice from other countries and our farmlands be developed into something else. Creative economy, the digital economy, etc. we have to maybe identify some sectors where we can be more productive and we can have the value add in terms of the regional, global, or rather the global value chain. Some academicians will say that, but of course, there are political considerations in doing so. As a region, we've been trading to all these countries, which are our FTA partners: Japan, Asean, China, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India. However, we have left some major partners such as EU and the US in the process. And that's the reason why the department will be pursuing, hopefully, more aggressive engagements with these remaining two major partners of the Philippines in terms of trade and investment. Because in the end, the global value chain for the Philippines is really important, because the reality out there is that whatever we have, whatever we produce, whatever you're holding on, the chairs you're sitting on, they're not just produced in one location. It's produced because of the collaboration among different countries, among different professionals, among different manufacturers. That is globalization, such as this one, which is a Boeing plane. Such as your iPhone, which is also a product of different collaboration across the region. For services, we have done liberalization in most of the services sectors, and we're now in the process of completing two more packages for the year, a Package 9 services and a Package 10 services. Quite simply, when you talk about services liberalization, you talk about market access provided to our service suppliers across the region. That includes foreign equity participation, the 60-40 constitutional limitations. Sectors will be required to at least level up to a 70% foreign equity participation. So I'm sure you have questions later on, and I'll try to address that during the open forum. But what exactly do we talk about when you say foreign equity, 70% foreign participation for services, service suppliers, construction, etc. But there's also what we call the MRAs, comprising 7 professionals: the health-related, medical, dental, nursing, the business-related, archi, engineering, and accountancy, and the land surveying. There's another one, an 8th one, which is the MRA on tourism professionals. But it's not handled by PRC anymore. Investment, we focus on 4 things: promotion, cooperation, facilitation, and protection. Bakit ko po pinapakita itong tatlong aspeto na to? Goods, the services, and the investments. In an agreement, usually these are the 3 core elements that we look at. We do not just talk about manufacturing, tariffs, and zero, customs issues. We also talk about services, the design, the complementation of services in manufacturing, etc. But at the same time, we also talk about investment. Because when there is investment, there is job generated in the process at the domestic level. So this is our FTA network. And again, the focus of the Philippines as part of the international trade strategy is really to look at deepening and expanding our engagement in the region. Kadalasan po, ang partner natin, again, the US and the EU, nakakalimutan po natin na meron po tayong neighbors sa tabi lang. How many of you have talked to some colleagues elsewhere in Asean? Sino po sa inyo may ka-network sa Myanmar? Sino po sa inyo may network sa Cambodia, sa Singapore, sa Malaysia? Or sino po sa inyo may ka-network sa US at sa EU? Then you ask yourself, tama ba na kung nagkukulang ako sa aking partnership with my neighbors compared to what I currently have with those in major economies like the US and the European Union? Let me show you why this matters. Look at this graph, table rather. The Philippines, together with the rest of ASEAN, is being evaluated by the ASEAN Secretariat on every 2 years. From 2008 to 2013, those are 3 phases, we've been evaluated based on our performance sa ating kinomit doon sa blueprint. And this is our score, 87.2%. Singapore is 89, Vietnam is 88, Thailand is 88, Malaysia is 88, Brunei is 86. But Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, they're 85, no? Below 87. Pangilan po si Pilipinas? If we're 87, nauna sa atin si Singapore, si Thailand, si Vietnam, si Malaysia, Malaysia, we're almost in the middle. 5 or 6 out of the 10 ASEAN member states. Tandaan po natin ang ASEAN was established in the 60s, and the first 4 or 5 founders of ASEAN included the Philippines. Do you remember that? The Philippines was one of the founders of ASEAN. Nasa 5 po tayo. 2015, or rather, as of 2013, our performance in the region, pang-5 po tayo, or pang-6. You analyze it. Is it good? Is it bad? I always say, you have water in front of you. Tama po ba? Yung tubig na yan, pag tinitigan nyo, what do you see? Do you see a glass half empty or a glass half full? Who says it's a glass half empty? Who says the water in front of you now or the glass in front of you rather, is glass half full? Who says, I don't know? Who says, I want more water, please? So in any case, what I'm saying is this. For me, every time I see a glass with water, it's always glass half full. There's no other way for the Philippines to go up. Tama po ba yun? Tama po ba? Or masyado na po tayong jaded? Masyado na po ba tayong, very grounded, really in touch with reality, that even us, you professionals, fail to dream bigger. That even you professionals fail to see that there's a gamut of opportunities out there, and the glass I'm seeing at the moment, I'm holding at the moment, is really a glass half full. This is what I see. The Philippines has a long way to go, but in the end, it's going towards the top of the mountain. Tama po ba? Sana ganun din po tayo. Do we all agree? Yes. Thank you very much. But, let me just tell you, Myanmar, if you go to Myanmar now, a particular hotel I stayed before, 3-4 years ago, pagpasok ko po sa hotel, walang tao. Ngayon po, last year, several times, you go to that particular hotel in Yangon, even before you reach the lobby of the hotel, busloads of tourists are already parked doon sa driveway. Naghihintay sila na makapasok at mag-register at mag-check-in sa hotel because they are seeing potentials, business opportunities in Myanmar. That's why I ask, who among you have already networked in these countries? Some people, some nationals are already seeing the opportunities. I hope we begin looking at these opportunities. In the Philippines, to support this integration process, the government has been doing several projects, initiatives. For single market and production base, we have what we call a Philippine National Trade Registry. We have that national single window for customs, export, importation, equitable economic development. Our department, even the Secretary Domingo, is always pushing for an SME-oriented initiatives and programs of the government. In fact, next week when we go to Kuala Lumpur with the President for the summit, one of the interventions of the President will always include promotion of SMEs, enhancing trade facilitation, providing trade facilitation for SMEs. A competitive economic region will also look into the possibility of reviewing foreign investment negative list and some reforms in our regulatory measures. And likely, for the integration of the global economy, we're doing more advocacies on these free trade agreements so that, in the end, our engagement with China, with Australia, with New Zealand will not just be limited on paper, but as exporters, as importers, as professionals, you know what exactly you can do to expand your business in these new markets. Ito po ang ating game plan for the year, or for the past years. The ASEAN Economic Community is anchored on the 4Cs strategy of the Philippines. I mean, for us, when we are continuously rolling this out. Number one is this: competitiveness. Definitely, there has to be a concern on whether one is competitive or not. There is a need to focus on the issue of competitiveness as a tool to level up the game, to provide better services to our consumers, to even be more dynamic in your processes and your supply of service. Without competition, nothing will happen, I believe. Kadalasan ang tanong sa akin, bakit ba kailangan pa ng competition? Ang sagot ko dyan, bakit hindi yun natin nakikita ang competition nangyayari po araw-araw? Pumunta ka sa palengke. Sa palengke pa lang, merong dalawang tindera, si Aling Lucring at si Aling Leticia. Si Aling Lucring, nagbebenta siya ng pechay. Si Aling Leticia, nagbebenta rin siya ng pechay. Isa lang ang kinukuha na nilang pechay, isa lang supply nila from Baguio. Pero si Aling Lucring, pag kumuha siya sa supplier ng pechay, isasalpak na lang niya yung kanyang pechay doon sa harapan ng kanyang estante, may putik-putik pa, etc. Si Aling Leticia, pag kinuha niya yung pechay, hugasan niya muna to, lalagay niya sa cabinet, walang ipis sa cabinet o sa basket, may price tag pa. Kanino ka ngayon pupunta? Sa una o sa pangalawa? Does it make sense? It's prevalent. It's happening outside. You go to a particular palengke market, which I always do every time I'm in a different place. I don't go to tourist spots. I always go to the palengke. Not because my boss was a former Mr. Palengke, no, but ang point ko lang is because you see the dynamism of the place sa palengke mismo, and you see that competition is really prevalent in the marketplace. Second, there's a need for us to comply with our international commitments. Compliance. Dr. Cherito Habito, former NEDA Secretary General, will say, AEC is really pushing us to do the right things now. Complying with international standards. Engineers, they have their Washington Accords. Architecture, they have their international standards. But it's inevitable that you always look at these standards as pushing you to really reform for the better. Kung wala pong compliance sa international standards, wala pong mangyayari din sa atin. And last two is the collaboration that we're currently doing with different parties, with Congress, legislative, executive, even the judiciary, etc., and even the other stakeholders. That is why we have partnership with PRC, with associations, so that we collaborate towards delivering what we promise to deliver. And in the end, there's a need to communicate all these right messages so that our people, our stakeholders, you, our bosses, will not fear the process of integration, but in fact embrace it, be challenged by it, and do something about it. Tama po ba? For DTI, we've been doing advocacy sessions for the past year, since 2010. And we've done 613 sessions, totaling 71 plus participants, covering 21,000 plus participating companies. That's why I asked when I began with my presentation, who among you have really attended our sessions? I'm quite surprised that out of the 613 sessions to date, across the country, mukhang isa pala nakita ko may hand na naka-attend, or a few, tatlo. baka kailangan dapat mas agresibo po tayo. These are seminars offered freely to everyone. And maybe, again, it's time to widen your consciousness and be more involved in the economic community process. Prospects and challenges. Our approach to FTAs is calibrated. We want competition, but we also look into the sensitivities of some of the sectors. But we focus on public-private partnership and at the same time advocate for more SME development in the region. So, bago ko po tapusin, meron po akong tatlong tanong. Do you think there will be a big bang in 2015 this year? There will be an ASEAN economic community. Do you think there will be a big bang? Who says yes? Who says no? Who says I don't know? Who says all of the above? Who says I was absent during that session? I don't know. No big bang will happen this year. In 2010, we have lowered down our tariff. We've been doing MRAs. It's happening. It's out there. There's no big bang happening, and the process will continue. I talk about a post-2015 vision. Now the economic leaders, the ASEAN leaders, will be doing an ASEAN 2025 vision. The next 10 years for ASEAN will be critical also to make sure that we bridge the achievements we have for the past years to the next phase of regional cooperation. Second question, should we be concerned? Who says it's okay, I can choose not to be concerned? Who says we should be concerned? Yes, you should be concerned. As I said, sooner or later, it will affect you. Do we stand a chance? I firmly believe we do stand a chance. The economic outlook, the prospects that we've been getting from the international community or third-party international institutions, we have a very rosy outlook for the Philippines in the next, few years. The President, 2 years ago, when we went to Tokyo for an ASEAN-Japan summit, he had a meeting with top Japanese firms, associations, chambers. On that long table, the President expressed to the Japanese firms, you should be investing in the Philippines because in the next few years, 20, 30, 40 years, we have the right people to provide the needs of your companies. The young generation will peak in the next 30, 40 years for the Philippines. Hence, it will highly contribute to the development and the processes of your company. Ganun po ako rin, kabilib din sa lahat, sa generation ngayon, that in the end, we really have a chance in pushing ourselves to an elevated economic situation for everyone. Let me close with another acronym. I said UAP, right? What is U again? Understand. What is A? Accept. And what is P? Push. Let me give you another set of letters. A good friend of mine, I'm sure nabasa ninyo na to siguro or kung ano man, but he always says, maybe in preparing for the ASEAN Economic Community, there has to be an ABC. ABC to AEC. A, there's a need for you to audit your process. Assess where you are. Check whether you have the right skills, whether you're competitive, etc. B, there is a need for you to brand yourself, your product, your services. Without branding, you will not be able to sell. Make sure you develop that brand and the trust incorporated in the brand. And lastly, C, i-communicate nyo naman po yung produkto na to at yung brand na ito. Hindi po pwedeng may maganda kayong service, may maganda kayong produkto, pero nahihiya po tayo i-communicate. Nahihiya po tayo makipag-link up with our neighbors, with other potential partners in the region. So again, The ABC is that we need to assess and audit ourselves, our processes, brand them in such a way that you have a unique proposition that you can offer to the market, and lastly, that you communicate this to the market. It's easier said than done, but I believe that in the end, you can do it. The Filipino professionals, for example, in particular, are always competitive. I believe in the competitiveness of the professionals, but it's not stagnant. It doesn't stop with what you already know, what will you already have. You need to learn, you need to expand your market, you need to do business as well. With that, maraming salamat po sa pakikinig, and in behalf of DTI, we hope we'll be having more engagement with you.